creating something, right? So we started writing software in our weekends and after our work day, in nights and etc. and all. And after 5 months, we had the software ready. And we went and pitched to the bus operator saying, use this software and then you'll probably get more sales because you'll be able to reach out to many more travel agents. So we created that software, went to these bus operators, started giving them software for free because it's an open source solution. But none of the bus operators were taking that software. There was a huge resistance to change. They said, oh, for 20 years or maybe 100 years, not 100 years, maybe 50 years since my father's time we've been doing this business, now we can't change our processes. It was too risky. And we were like 23, 24-year-old. When we go there, there's no credibility, right? I mean, you're a kid who comes with the software and you're asking us to change entire processes, the way we work, into a computerized system which is created by you, not even by the Infosys and the Wipros of the world, right? So we didn't have credibility and there was a huge resistance to change and we were not making any progress. And if bus operators didn't use the software that we created, there's no way that we could get travel agents log on onto a system because when they log on, they can't see any inventory there, right? So that was the end of the idea. And interestingly for us, what happened was I was sitting with a friend of mine and saying, how many software they got, but operators are not taking this software. So what do we do? And then this friend who works for Motorola, he told me that there is an institution called TIE. And that's how I got introduced to TIE. And I googled up, took membership, went to TIE Bangalore chapter. And there was a mentoring program like this. So I went there and then spoke about the idea. This was a problem that I faced and this is a solution that we created, but none of the bus operators were taken. And then the mentors liked the idea. They said it has potential. And then we were assigned 3 mentors from TIE. And those 3 mentors sat with us. They would meet us every week. Every Saturday morning, 10 to 11 was the meeting. Every week we would meet them and they would say, okay, now try this model, try this way, say, make this sales page, go to this guy, do that, and etc. and all. And then one thing led to another. We ended up, okay, we couldn't sell to the bus operators, but what the vendors told us is the bus operators will have huge resistance to change. So instead of trying to give software here, why don't you try from the other end? What it meant is create a website and somehow put some information about buses there and get inquiries. And when customers come onto your website and say, okay, I want to travel by this bus, take their phone number and then call up the bus operator. Same thing what the travel agent was doing, but on a website. Very, very manual way, but just to start off, gain some traction. And they said once you gain traction, maybe you can go back to the bus operator. Once you gain traction, by then you would have established credibility with the bus operators. Because every day you're selling 1 or 2 seats for them. Right? And then you can slowly, because now you have credibility, you can slowly ask them to use your software. So that is the advice we got. Then we scrapped this idea. We created that other software, which is redbus.in. Spoke to the bus operators, got information about their buses. The static information, what is the fare, what is the timing, how many buses running, which route, and etc. And we publish on the website. So when a customer comes and searches, he would see all the information minus seat availability. So if he wants to travel, let's say by KCNA bus, 11 p.m., he would click on that and say, I want to travel by this bus and leave his phone number. And once we get that lead, we call the bus operator, take inventory, and then somehow enable a transaction between the customer and us. That's how we slowly started gaining traction. And any questions till now?
Was this what you were employed?
Sorry?
Was all this what you were still employed?
No. Okay. No. The question was this all done when we were employed? So in the initial days, we were very worried because you have this huge orientation programs in MNCs where they tell you you can't infringe the IP that you're doing here, you can't do any other job besides this job, this is a full-time job, and etc. and all that. When we got this idea, we were very worried because you're working on something else. Are you infringing your employment contract? So we went and spoke to our managers. I spoke to my manager And the manager was very kind. I mean, I think it's the same in all other companies. The manager said, as long as I was working for Texas Instruments, I was doing the VLSI chip design. And the manager said, as long as you're not building the same microchip in whatever you're doing, it's okay. And you're telling me that you're doing software which is not related to the chip design that you're doing here, you can do whatever you want. And on top of that, you're saying it's a non-profit thing, so you can go and do it. And that's how we started doing it. So we worked on it for like 6 months, and the day we launched the commercial website, 1 month before that, we resigned. Even then, the manager was saying, it's okay, that is software, this is VLSI, why don't you work, and etc. But we left. Yeah.
Can you just explain pain points in startup stage when you were trying to gather the information? What kind of a problem you faced and how did you solve it? Just elaborate. Because it is very closely related to my thing, but I'm into education side where I'm trying to gather the information.
Yeah.
Even that's a big thing. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, actually, I think the biggest pain that we had during those days was the emotional drain. Right? Everything else was fine. If you didn't have money, there was always a friend of you who would give you money. If you didn't have office space, somebody could give you office space. Everything was fine. But those intangibles where it is all about your emotional strength, right? So we used to go to the bus operators. First of all, until then, when you're working for a nice MNC, you're pampered. Right? You enter the reception and the receptionist smiles at you, the guard smiles at you, and then there is air conditioning. If you don't like the food, then there's a food committee which changes the food there. There are like 20 things that happen in a MNC. And suddenly when you leave that and then get out there on the streets. So for me personally, when I left that and went to the bus operators, they don't even acknowledge your presence. So you go there, sit there, they don't even talk to you. Right? Sit in their reception until like there were days when you go in the morning and then you only get to talk to him in the evening. And it's personally I felt insulted. It's like what's happening and etc. And those were the toughest moments there. And thankfully we crossed all that. And otherwise, there were many times probably we could have just given up because it is unbearable sometimes.
How many must be?
Yeah.
So, how did you choose your co-founders and were there any challenges?
Sure. So the co-founders was pretty easy. I just said whoever was my flatmates. In fact, we were 7 of us living in a flat, all bachelors, just got a job. So all my BITS Pilani classmates who were working, Telugu classmates who were working in Bangalore, all of us took a flat and 7 of us used to live in that flat. And when I got this idea, because it was not a commercial idea, also maybe even if it's commercial idea, I just wrote to all the flatmates. We had a mailing list for that flat, which is called 7D. D was supposed to stand for dudes, so we said 7. We had a Yahoo group like that, and I wrote to that Yahoo group saying, this is what happened, and this is the idea that we have. Can we make it happen? Everybody jumped into it. So initially the startup was started by 7 of us. And then after the first 3 months, because of all the emotional problems, 4 of them left. They said it's not going to happen, we don't want to do it, and etc. And ultimately only 3 of us ended up starting. And 2 years back, 1 of the 3 left. So now only 2 of us are there. We don't know how long 2 of us will continue. 1 of us may drop off 2 years later or so. So, but it's okay because we are all, we don't feel bad to speak about it. We don't feel bad that, okay, 1 of us may not be there tomorrow. Because from day 1, we wanted to build it as an institution, right, which will run beyond the founder. We didn't want it to be a Khandani business that my children will come and run, right? It is an institution. Everything is accountable. I play only a role of CEO there. If there's a better CEO, I'm happy to give that a go. Likewise, the other co-founder also thinks that way, which has helped us quite a bit by thinking that way. Sure, I'll come. Yeah.
So you spoke about being a little insulted and not being respected like the way an MNC you get respect. So how do you make the transition from an employee to a entrepreneur who gets
I think, one thing that really helped us is the co-founders. Though we don't have any complementary skills, we studied in fact, the other two co-founders studied intermediate also together. They studied intermediate together, they studied engineering together, same education, same discipline, same everything. But what helped us is the bond that we had with each other. Right? It's like there were times when I said enough is enough. Then other co-founder would come and kind of lend his shoulder, and then I would lend my shoulder sometimes. I think that really got us going.
So in a nutshell, you choose your founders very wisely.
I think we were very lucky. There was no funda that we put, there was no question. We didn't wonder. I mean, when I had this idea, I didn't wonder, so how do I choose my co-founders? I just said, okay, my flatmates are the guys, and it worked out well. And that's why actually a lot of people keep saying that there's a lot of luck that gets into success. So I think there's so much luck that we've had. Yeah.
I wanted to ask in terms of operations. When you're an entrepreneur, you just started doing, there are too many things to do and too many things to be left aside. And I remember when I got funded, the 3 weeks I don't know what to do because there were too many plans and not enough time to action. So when you keep growing, how do you, what are the numbers? How do you prioritize things, etc., so that you're always a little ahead of what needs to be done and not get snowed into without compromising efficiency?
Yeah, I think, did you all get the question? Okay. Okay.
Okay, my question was that as an entrepreneur, when you're starting up something and you're practically responsible for everything, I mean, CEO nowadays means Chief Everything Officer. So, how do you prioritize work which needs to be done, work which can be kept aside without compromising on efficiency? I mean, I'm asking this because 3 weeks after we got funded, I didn't know what to do. There were too many things to be done, not enough time, and not enough people you could trust with the output of work you need. So, how do you maintain that compass of I don't know, priority versus efficiency?
Yeah, sure. At least in our case, what has helped is just asking these questions to ourselves. So we didn't have any funda, we didn't follow anybody's structure, and I don't think there are structures. Right? I mean, it's like when you're driving, right? Literally when you're driving, I mean, depending on all the things that fall on your road, you take your turns, right? It's pretty much like that, the life for us. And I think when we introspect, we come up with those priorities. For example, my priority until recently was to get the best team possible. And after the best team has come, the priority that I am pursuing right now is not do anything at office. Right? Just go to office, sit in your room, just look at some metrics and don't even ask questions about those. Come back. Because we wanted this institution to be built like that. That people take up, people are built. Right now the priority is to find a CEO who can probably become the CEO someday. So I think we'll all know our priorities when we ask these questions ourselves. For example, I don't know what will be the right priority for you. And most of us will know our priorities while we are walking the path.
I mean, you guys said it because you had at least 2 co-founders who were, more or less tuned to your the collective vision. What about, in my case, I mean, I'm a single guy who started his own company, got funded, and moving forward. For people who are, I mean, I don't know, a single entrepreneur, where does that questioning, etc., happen?
Actually, in our case, in our organization, there is no co-founder thing at all. There is a CEO and there's a senior management. So the biggest of the responsibilities are not handled by the co-founders. Otherwise, then we are running a Khandani business where I trust only my friend or my jija and I give them that, right? Biggest of the things are run by our CPO who handles the entire product. I have no control on how the website looks, right? I have no control on how the finances are managed. For example, some of you have noticed probably we are doing a TV ad. TV ad, the CFO had a budget. He can release within this how much ever. So I only keep to know retrospect that we're spending so many this thing. So I think by trusting the senior management and by getting that kind of a trustworthy senior management, we'll be able to build a stronger, robust company. As long as we keep it confined to the co-founders, I think it might get weaker. The company might get weaker. So, so I think we need to worry about not having co-founders. If you have a great senior management and we are giving them equity, they have ESOPs, they are equally excited about running the business, everything is fine.
Okay, now this might work, I mean, again, I'm speaking from inexperience more than anything. This might work when you have enough money and enough bandwidth to do all those things. In the initial stages, the first 18 months after you went commercial, how did you manage that?
Yeah, the biggest money that you always had when you didn't have money is your equity and your idea that is going to be successful, right? And during those days, we get huge equity, saying that this idea, I mean, a person who was earning 20 lakhs joined us for 5 lakhs. And the calculation for the 5 lakhs was done, saying, we said, we used to have this Excel sheet where we used to say, what is your survival? And actually it was created by the first senior management who joined us. Then after that we used that template in and out for the next few senior management who joined us. So that template has, it says what is your survival. So whatever is your survival will be paid in cash. Rest is all paid by stocks. So this guy prepared that survival sheet which had my house rent is this much, my children education is this much, my groceries is this much, and he had some 10 list of items which are the basic survival needs. And then sum of it, whatever comes as a monthly thing, that is your salary. And that is how we literally work. And then look at the people who are willing to take that. And those are the people who have actually helped us grow this thing. And today, their equity is worth quite good. So, but if you have failed, then they would also fail. Right? Yeah. And then you have to meet probably 50 people to find that one person like that. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So this fake it till you make it approach you did of shuttling the ticket sales. Did you have a number internally or with bus operators on when you would start shifting to automated, or did you just take it as it goes?
We just took it as it went. You never know. Actually, there is one time where we made a plan. That is after 3 years after we started. We said, okay, probably now is the time for people to get computerized. And then we went back to create the software for bus operators. We created that software, and during the launch phase, when we made the plan, because now we have investors and VCs and we have to make plans, and when we made this plan, we projected 5 years for people to get computerized. And then we were amazed. In the first year, we signed up about 400 bus operators to use this software, which means more than one operator was getting computerized in a day. So that is the pace at which things happen when it really takes off. And it really took off. And even in the intro, I just realized actually when you were introducing, Sanjay was saying 700 bus operators. That is outdated. We are working with about 1200 bus operators right now. He said 21 states, we're working in 24 states. So when it takes off, things just change drastically. And that is what we witnessed.
So, first of all, I'm very happy that you are also from semiconductor background. So the next question I have is, it was very easy for you to convince your manager that you are going to work on a different like software. So how do I convince my guys that, because I am going from a semiconductor services company and starting a services company which might actually end up as a competitor to the company which I am currently working.
Okay, I don't know. Actually, in our case, it was not easy to convince my manager. It was easy to convince my mother than my manager, because my manager was very concerned, saying, "You're doing well. Why do you want to leave this job to go and work with supposedly rowdies and gundas?" The bus operators, right? I mean, everybody's perception is, oh, they are rowdies, gundas. The other day I was reading some Telugu news article on one of the bus operators who was supposed to, I think he's trying for a ministry and etc. The things that are written there, because I know him personally, I met him and etc. The things that are written there are like so filmatic. Like, oh, this guy has come and killed the APSRTC. He's never been a minister to kill APSRTC. I think a lot of things are just dramatized. So my manager was very concerned that we are leaving that. But by then I had met some of the bus operators. So I had this great conviction that these are good people. And I actually have huge empathy towards at least our bus operators, because look at them. See, when we are running business, all of us have tensions. Somebody is resigning, somebody doesn't do the work well, we don't have the money to pay the payroll and etc. and all. But at least because we are educated, we read up, we get these forward mails which talks about philosophy, we look at Dalai Lama, we do all these things where there are some suggestions which are coming to us saying, calm down, it's going to get over ABC, XYZ and etc. But look at this guy who has never got any forwarded email, who has never had anybody to discuss like this. All that he's grown up is in a competitive field of Mera business versus Tera business and etc. and all. And naturally when somebody, one of his employee creates a loss by, let's say, not coming to work or misbehaves and etc. and all, they will react that way because they don't know any other way. And imagine, it's all their money, their own money. Here at least we have VC's money. So imagine the tensions and the pressures and all that they are in. They will behave like that. But when you sit with them, calm down. I mean, I don't think that they will behave like that in their family when they get back. Right? They're like any one of us. Because even I have my uncles and etc. who do business. They might be like that there in their business, but when they come home, they're like anybody else. Right? So I mean, noticing all these, I built empathy towards the bus operators, and then I could communicate to I had built this great conviction which I could communicate to my manager, saying that no, they are not rowdies and gundas. And then he said, if at all that fails, you come back and the job is open.
Because it was easier because the business which you were going to do was different from what TI was doing.
Yeah.
So in our case, if I want to start as semiconductor services, I have to do a lot of groundwork. And at the same time, I have to convince my manager that I am planning to do this, because as somebody asked you, the question of infringement and things like that. So now, how do we?
Sure. So after you leave your job, there is no infringement.
So I have to.
While you are working, if you do the same thing in your startup, then there is an infringement.
But it takes some time for it to establish before I actually.
Okay, so who is the semiconductor entrepreneur here who you have to go to? In this room, which side? You have the answer, right? There are 2-3 semiconductor people here. Just go there and ask them. Right? Okay, so I will finish my presentation. Yeah.
What I think, because since last 20 years I have been in the small scale industry, just wanted to go up to the medium scale. So what I feel is manufacturing is something, a different kind of, it's a totally different ballgame. When you come to marketing, it's a different ballgame. You have been doing both the things. So just wanted to know what exactly is needed to just do. See, manufacturing is my sector.
Yeah.
I'm expertise in this. I can design anything and I can make that product.
Yeah.
But marketing, when it comes, it's very difficult task. But I have done 10 years of marketing also.
Yeah.
But now when I'm selecting the people, they are not giving me 100%. They are not giving me 100%. So there I feel I can do much better. But the task force, what I'm just looking, I'm not finding it. I'm not able to do that. So there I feel I can just realize something on that part.
Yeah, actually what has helped me is meeting people. For example, I was an engineer. I didn't know what is a brand. I didn't know what is software. I knew VLSI. But just meeting people. For example, he's a digital marketing person here. Just meeting him, he will teach us what is digital marketing, how to do it, how not to do it, and etc. and all. I think meeting people will teach us quite a bit. Then interviewing people also will teach us quite a bit, because if you meet 50 people and ask them questions and look at how they are answering, etc., you learn about that subject. So these are some of the things that has helped me understand other things. And the other one is when people are not working, which was very difficult to me. The first time when I had to fire people because they were not working, it was very difficult. Because how do you fire people? You can hire people, but how do you fire people, right? And then my mentors actually came forward and helped me do that. And it was more like he was saying that it's a duty of yours. Let's say you have 100 people in your company, and there are 3 people who are not doing well. By tolerating them, you're doing injustice to the 97 people who are working hard, right? And that injustice you can't let happen as the head of the organization. And these were the kind of orientation that I got, which made me go and bite the bullet there, and which helped. It is always tough, even today it is tough for me to fight, but I think it should be as natural a process as we hire. Otherwise, we are creating an organization which is going to collapse, and we are not living up to the leader that we are supposed to live up to. Right? We are supposed to do the good things, favorable things, and also unfavorable things. But if we are not doing unfavorable things, then we are not living up to the role that we have. So maybe that is one thing. So I'll quickly finish my presentation. Okay, so this was the problem, and then we came up with these three products. So the first product is called BOSS. It stands for Bus Operator Software System. This is a software which is created for bus operators. Today, hundreds of bus operators use this software, because of which we get real-time access to their inventory, which we publish on Redbus for consumers to use. And we take the same information and put it on SeatSeller for travel agents to use. Remember the travel agent who could not get access to all the 30 bus operators? Now he logs on to SeatSeller and then he sees all the bus operators there. The only difference between Redbus and SeatSeller, though it has the same information, same prices, same everything, is on Redbus we don't show how much commission we get from each operator, whereas on SeatSeller we show it to travel agent how much commission we get from each operator, because when he sends a ticket from here, he makes that commission. Okay? Okay? Okay, so now the business model, the network effect in our business. So why, what has been causing our growth is a nice network effect here. With more and more bus operators coming here, more and more travel agents will come here. Because imagine another competitor of ours, let's say Blue Bus. Blue Bus, let's say, also has a Blue Boss, Blue Redbus, and a Blue SeatSeller. Because we had this first mover advantage, before Blue Bus is born, maybe we would have signed up 50 bus operators. And now there is a Blue Bus which goes and signs up, let's say, 2 bus operators. Now for the new travel agent who signs in, he has a choice between going to a platform which has 50 bus operators versus a platform which has 2 operators. Most naturally, everything remaining the same. Of course, we have to be competitive on commissions and etc. and all. Everything remaining the same, the travel agent is most likely likely to go to the 50 bus operator network, right? And he will come here. And now, again, because there are so many travel agents here, the next bus operator will come and join BOSS, because he gets access to so many thousands of travel agents. So between this, what happens is one feeds the other, and the other feeds the other, and it continues to grow. With more and more bus operators coming in, more and more travel agents come in, and between these two, we get larger and larger access to inventory, which we publish on Redbus, and that becomes a compelling proposition for consumers to come onto the website. Again, customer also looks at it, okay, I go to A website, I get access to all the buses that are there. I go to a B website, I get a subset of that. I have limited time, why should I go to B and then go to A? I will just go to A. And that's the network which continues to feed itself and continues to grow. Okay? Okay. So now, okay, sure.
One small question on this. Let's say for a travel agent who is looking onto SeatSeller and selling, I mean, even Redbus.in, if I don't know, technically, you can maybe have a login password where on Redbus.in he can see his commissions. Is there any specific reason to creating 2 different products?
There was a small reason, because one small reason is these are competing with each other. Let's say you go to a travel agent, the travel agent gives you a Redbus ticket. Customer next time they just come onto Redbus website and book. Customer was otherwise going to the travel agent. What travel agent is doing is literally doing marketing for us by selling our Redbus branded ticket. So he needs to have a different branded ticket, which is a white label. And the second thing is the workflows are very different. For example, customer, when he books, he is always booking for himself and his family members. There is a particular, they needed to have, let's say, search, or they needed to have the profit and loss statement, kitna upload kiya, kitna paisa mila, and etc. Because the customer just swipes his card and buys a ticket. Whereas a workflow for a travel agent is a little different. He needs to know last month how much money did I make, which routes am I selling. He needs to have a CRM in case he wants to send a SMS to all his customers who have bought from him. So those are the extra features that Seatseller will have, which Redbuzzer will not have. So little bit softwares are different, but the primary reason is they have to be two different brands.
Is the Seatseller different from what?
And then Via's bus ticketing is powered by Seatseller. So if somebody buys a bus ticket on Via, it's powered by Seatseller in the backend. So that way, I'll just come to that point. Seatseller is a little different because it has direct connectivity to the bus operator. What I mean by that is, let's say bus operator, I'll also come to analytics a little later, but in the context I'll just talk about it. How much time do we have? Another thing that is making the whole system work is the analytics that are there. For example, this bus operator who now uses BOSS has a dashboard where he sees, okay, yesterday if I had sold 100 seats, where are they sold? Are they sold to the customers, or are they sold to a travel agent? Out of the 10,000 travel agents, which agents? Has SR travel agent sold my ticket, or Kukatpalli travel agent sold my ticket? Has my repeat travel agent who have been doing business with me, only those are selling my tickets, or new travel agents are doing my business? So a lot of analytics this bus operator gets on the dashboard, and then let's say he realizes that every time there is only a bunch of 30 travel agents who are booking his seat, but the number of travel agents that we have is 40,000, like Sanjay said, but nobody else is selling. So no agent, let's say in Chandanagar, is selling this bus operator seat. Then what this operator can do is, so the UI that he has is a map of India, on which there are these 40 dots of each travel agent geographical location. So he can just choose Chandanagar agents and say, these agents, I want to double my commission, just to incentivize them to sell his inventory. So this way, he can actually get more agents, different agents. He can run schemes to push his inventory. Let's say 3 hours before the bus departure, 3 hours before the bus departure, he realizes that half of his bus is empty, only half is full. With that half bus, anyway, he has to run the bus, and he would burn the same amount of fuel, same taxes, same driver, same everything, but just the other half is going vacant. Now, if he drops his price, or if he increases his commission, every seat that comes there is directly goes to his bottom line, because he's not incurring any extra cost. Are you all with me?
Yes.
Right? So that case, what he can do is, he can just say 3 hours before the departure, because my occupancy is only 50%, let me increase my commission to 50%. I don't care, even if I get, for a 500 rupee ticket, if I get 250 rupees, I really don't care, because it's directly going to my bottom line. Right? So all those things he can do by getting analytics from who is selling his inventory. He will also get analytics as to Kukatpalli agent, does he sell at 3 p.m.? I mean, what is his curve in a day? Does he sell more seats at 2 p.m. or does he sell more seats at 5 p.m.? And then he'll also have a moving average which tells him, okay, 5 days before the departure, he can pick up a bus and say, okay, what is the occupancy in this bus? Occupancy 5 days before the departure, let's say is 30%. Then there is an indicator which tells him, should he worry or should he not worry? 30% is it good 5 days before the departure, or 30% is bad? So that indicator is again out of our analytics. And how we get that analytics is, we look at demand. We mine demand as to 5 days ke baad, date of journey, what is the demand for that route, for that day, for air-conditioned buses, for the price that he sells. And how do we get that information? By user behavior. Because every day, lakhs of people are coming and searching on our site. And we can say how many people are searching for, let's say, Bangalore, let's say Hyderabad to Vijayawada. Today is 18th. On 23rd, how much demand is there? How many searches are happening? Because not everybody who is searching is buying, right? And we know how much inventory is there. Right? If the inventory and the demand is in sync, then we say, oh, you have to worry. If they are not in sync, then we say, don't care, because there is a scarcity of inventory. Your inventory will get sold. All these real-time analytics. We also go and mine waitlist and RAC on railways. Because that is also a very good proxy to say whether people will buy on 23rd of May. When people travel by train, is train full? If train is full, they will go by bus. Right? So should we worry? Should we not worry? Should you increase your commission because you are desperate now to get seats, or should we sit tight? Yes, actually I think it has happened more because we just focused on one product. We've just put our thing saying we're only going to do bus and nothing else. Because one big conviction that we had is that it's huge, and in internet the only entry barrier is by all your IPs. I'm able to speak this so freely because I know it is so difficult to create. Right? And the whole data mining, we mine about 400 events every second, which means 400 events are written into the database every second as we are talking. That is faster than the usual data write speeds into a database. And to make that happen, you really have to innovate. And all that is happening as your site is functioning with no disruption to that. And then you need to have server capacity which is doing this parallel job as people are buying. Right? And then you need to have channels and the pipes which will fetch that information from there to write into your database while transaction information is also flowing through it. So all this is actually complex. It may be easily said, and that is the differentiator. Otherwise today we see 20 other websites which sell bus tickets, which give discounts, which do 20 things. But still we are probably 10 times bigger than any one of them, our closest competitor, and that's because of all these advantages. So what we do is get these great people, tell them we are only going to do bus and only in India. A lot of times it's also our location, we go to Malaysia, shall we go to Singapore, shall we go to Africa and all. But we said let's do it only here and only in bus. And by just stating that, all these smart people, they don't have anything else to do. So they get deeper into these things. Chalo, abhi ye bhi solve karte hain. And because every day you're getting feedback. Every day customers are unhappy. I saw 4 or 5 hands go up, right? And then you have an opportunity to solve the problem. And if there is a day where there are no hands risen, bus operators are happy, everything is just running systematically, then probably that's the time for us to do anything else. And until then, just keep doing, getting into things. And every time we do something, we are building an IP. Let's say, there's so many countries who write to us saying, by the way, bus ticket on internet in the aggregated form is done for the first time in the world in India. Right? No other country. Like if you search for Google Trends, do you all know Google Trends? Right? If you search for online bus tickets on Google Trends and see which geography has been searching for online bus tickets and how the queries of online bus tickets has been rising, you'll see that that's been rising only from 2007. Or 2006. That's the time when we started. Before that, there were no searches on Google for online bus tickets, which means nowhere in the world people were searching for online bus tickets, which means nobody was selling online bus tickets. And then after that, if you see it from which countries are the searches coming from, India is the largest, which means only in India is available, no other country. Then next is I think Malaysia and now Mexico and etc., which all come up recently. And we are not afraid. A lot of people tell us, oh, you had this great opportunity where you could have gone and set bus ticketing in the entire world because you did it, it's your idea, your innovation, now others are doing it, copying it, and etc. But we believe that let them all do whatever they are doing. The day we want to go there, the day we want to go there, we will have all the IPs to kind of establish ourselves very strongly there. For example, today we all fear, in e-commerce space, we all fear the entrance of Amazon. Right? And Amazon is not worried. Amazon is saying, okay, even though I am late to enter, I know I will win there. Because they know how to ship in time, they know how to make this work, how to scale up, scale down. That's the IP they built. Another example, sorry, small digression, another example. I was in Delhi and I was doing my internship in Delhi before shifting to Bangalore. In Delhi, usually the newspaper is Times of India. So you get Times of India, you go through the photos and nice and etc. And then when I shifted to Bangalore, I realized Times of India doesn't come. And I said, why don't you order Times of India? And then to my shock, my roommate said, there's no Times of India in Bangalore. And I was shocked because Times of India is like predated independence. Before independence, there's this newspaper called Times of India. And I've always known it as the country's largest English newspaper. And Bangalore is such a big city. And Times of India is not there in Bangalore. Why have they not come to Bangalore? And then in 2003 or 2004 or 2003 time frame, they entered Bangalore. And when they entered Bangalore, within 1-2 years, they are the largest English daily in Bangalore. Because they know the recipe, they know how to get into circulation, they know everything. Right? So imagine Whenever they started, imagine they were countrywide without knowing the recipe. They were collapsed then itself. Right? So there are plenty of examples like that where you focus in one geography, so focus in one product and be a master of that. You're protecting your own business, you're building a cash cow which allows you to do experiments. And wherever you enter, because you have the recipe, there's a high chance of success. Right? So that's how we do. Now I think time's up. Sanjay is smiling at me. I will just finish my presentation. So this is to say that format independent, we sell through cash on delivery. We also sell through retail franchise outlets, which are Redbus branded. And this is exciting. So what Seedseller does is, besides powering travel agents who are brick and mortar travel agents, it also powers a lot of organized bus ticketing in the country. Like the example I was talking about, Via, Make My Trip, now Yatra, Clear Trip, Expedia in India, anywhere if anybody goes and buys a bus ticket there, the backend is powered by Seedseller. So we really don't mind somebody going and buying in some other website, because at the end of the day it goes through our database and we make some money out of it. Right? So then there are bus operators' own websites. Many bus operators have their websites, and most of those websites are again powered by us, because we give them the software. Right? If a customer goes and buys on the bus operator's website, again we end up making some money, because that the model is a SaaS-based model. So the software that is given BOSS, when we give it to the bus operator, is a SaaS-based model. The Seedseller is a transaction-based model. Redbus is again a transaction-based model. So if a customer comes and buys on Redbus, we get some revenue, the most of the revenue. When somebody goes to a travel agent who prints a ticket, even though it's not called Redbus, even though it may be called Sri Lakshmi Travel Agency, without Seedseller in the ticket, it is again we make some money out of it. If somebody goes on to a Expedia and books a ticket, we again make some money out of it. If somebody goes to a bus operator's own website and buys a ticket, we again make some money out of it. If somebody goes to a bus operator's office and buys a ticket, if the bus operator is selling a ticket out of BOSS, again we make some money. So that's the revenue model. Okay. And okay, I can skip this. A quick company snapshot. This is the last one. So we've been growing quite well in the last few years. Last year we closed with about 600 crores. This year is a momentous year where we are thinking we will certainly cross 1,000 crores. And this is we are a 6-year-old startup, 26 regional offices, 600 employees, 1,000 plus 1,200 actually, 1,200 bus operators, 800 of them are on BOSS. About 20,000. Actually, this 20,000 is now changed, because about 3 weeks back we went live with KSRTC, and KSRTC has a huge sea of buses. It has about every day they have about 1 lakh seats to be sold. That is the kind of inventory they have. So I don't know the latest number. If 20,000 is all the private operators, maybe we added another 20,000 schedules to it. About right now, I think we have about 5 RTCs. We recently tied up. We are going live next week with UPS RTC. That makes us 5 RTCs. 40,000 point of sale outlets, 200 partners. The partners are like Make My Trip, Expedia, and etc. and all the Via and all these websites. Even if somebody buys with Paytm, it's powered by us anyway. And in terms of number of transactions, we'll be amongst the highest transacting, not just in the bus, but in travel. Definitely, we are the highest transacting website in the country, after IRCTC, of course. We do more transactions than Make My Trip, which is the largest OTA. I think we'll be amongst the top 1 or 2 amongst all the categories put together in terms of transactions per day. That's about us. Thank you. Some of you, so how many of you know A/B test? A/B test, 2 people, 4 people. How many of you are internet entrepreneurs here? Okay, more than 4 people. Okay, fine. So A/B test is a very powerful, very powerful test. So how do you decide whether it should have 0 booking fee here or not? how do you decide whether the color of this button should be red or green or pink or yellow, right? How do you decide whether this should be here or this whole search box should be there, right? Every placement here, every size of the box, every font used here is out of a scientific this thing. It is not because our color is red, everything is red. It is not because we like a white color background, the color of this website is white. It is not because everything here is for a reason, and that reason we know by something called A/B test. So what we do is, let's say 3 of us sit together, and one of us likes this to be red, one of us likes it to be green, one of us likes it to be pink. So how do you decide whether it should be white, green, pink? Right? What we do is, for 10% of our customers, for 90% of our customers, it's shown red. 10% of our customers, it's shown as green. And then we measure the behavior on those 10% of the customers. At the end of the day, what do we want out of this site? What we want is more conversions. If 100 people come onto this site, we want all the 100 to buy from us. But usually everybody who comes here doesn't buy. Conversion rates across all the websites, the average conversion rates in e-commerce space is 2%. Out of 100 people who go there, only 2 people buy. It's same like how many people go to a mall and how many of them end up buying, right? In travel, it is 4%. On Redbus, it is huge. That's also because of many other reasons. What we do is 90% of the people are shown this red button, 10% of the people are shown green button. And then we measure if people who went and saw the green button, out of which, let's say 20 people, out of the 100 people who go there, 20 people buy, versus people who have seen this red button, only 10 people buy. Then it's a no-brainer. Right? You just put the green button. Because at the end of the day, you're not really tied up about what color it should be. You only want conversions. So this way, by doing A/B tests, you are able to give the judgment to your customers. Everything here, for example, you see this thing here, McAfee Secure. After putting this here, our conversion rate went up by 2%. And 2% conversion rate improvement is a huge thing. Without doing anything, your sales are increasing. Or the other way to look at it is, 2% of people are getting irritated with your website or dissatisfied with your website and not ending up buying. By just putting that, people's trust and confidence in your site has gone up and people started buying. Everything, right? Another last thing is, let's say, why is this a text box? Usually on websites we see a drop down, right? From and to is a drop down. Why have we put it as a text box? So if you search, let's say Delhi to Hyderabad, right? Somebody comes and searches Delhi to Hyderabad. Do you think there is a bus from Delhi to Hyderabad? How many of you think there is a bus from Delhi to Hyderabad? 2 people. Okay. So when you search Delhi to Hyderabad, what you get is a oops. It says there is no bus from Delhi to Hyderabad. Right? But what it means to us is there is somebody who is searching from Delhi to Hyderabad and is willing to travel by bus on 23rd May. And imagine if there are 500 people who are searching for buses from Delhi to Hyderabad every day. That's a fantastic research information which we can pass on to the bus operators and say, why don't you run a bus from Delhi to Hyderabad? Right? So now bus operators know scientifically that, oh, if I run a bus on this route, I am likely to get customers. Right? That increases the industry size, that increases our business. You will be surprised how many of you think that now there are buses from Ahmedabad to Hyderabad. Only 2 people. Let's check that. There is a bus from Ahmedabad which is in Gujarat to Andhra Pradesh. Right? So this could have never been possible if, who would know if people from Hyderabad are willing to go to Gujarat by bus? Right? Today there are so many buses like that. There's a bus from here to Orissa, from Hyderabad to Bhubaneswar, which would have never possible. From here to Kerala, Trivandrum. So I mean, this whole website can give you so much information that your partners, you, everybody can use. Again, here, so many people are searching from, let's say, filtering by boarding point. Then we know this is a boarding point that the bus operators must have. If they don't have Paradise as a boarding point, they are losing out 20% of their business. Again, by just mining who is clicking what in these filters, we come to know which is the most popular boarding points, how much business is this guy likely to increase if he starts that boarding point. Again, other information is we know which is there are different prices that are written here. We know which is the fastest moving price point today, right now. If people are buying tickets at 500 rupees and some operator has priced it at 600 rupees and his inventory is not moving, and we know that out of the 10 seats customers are buying, 9 seats are bought at 500 rupees. That information is so valuable to the bus operator. We just pass it on and say, just reduce your price from 600 to 500, you are likely to get 100% occupancy. And then he drops the price by 100, great. At the end of the day, all that he looks at is, in this trip, I have to make 40,000 rupees. Doesn't matter what price I sold the seat at. Doesn't matter how much occupancy it is. Right? And then it also comes back and helps the customer. Because customer wants to buy a 500 rupee ticket. If there is no 500 rupee ticket here, customer will end up not buying. He will go to a travel agent and bargain. Right? So it helps everybody in the ecosystem by just taking this information, giving it to everybody who can use that information. Right? Okay, that ends my presentation. I don't have much time. Thank you very much.
Questions they asked, and I think you all got what you wanted at this time.
Yep.
But as the time limits, and definitely, I want Funny to stay back for the entire day, but he got his own other schedule. And I really thank you a lot, Funny, for coming to Hyderabad. And really, you're waiting for this day since a long time. I'm very happy at last. Thank you very much. I request Mr. Pradeep Mittal, please come and give a small token.